Hello, hello. Welcome to Tammy's Table. I am Tammy Gaines, and I am so excited that you decided to join us today at the table. The idea here is to think about the last time you went to a great gathering or great party. All the most interesting conversation and education happens in the kitchen, no matter where you are. And that's what this is meant to be. Kitchen environment, uh, casual, but we want you to walk away with some really valuable information. So before I introduce my good friend, I want to talk to you about sort of the how this podcast came to be because it's relevant for today. So I have been through so much, which is in one of my other episodes. But I wanted to know, how do you bottle resilience so that anybody can drink it, anybody can follow it? So I developed the relentless resilience process, um, which really, it's a 7-step process because I believe developing resilience is very intentional. Doesn't happen accidentally. So Brian, if you could throw up that image. Cricket, cricket. All right. I will just start talking through. I'm not sure. Hopefully Brian's still there. Um, so essentially the idea is it starts with breaking patterns. We call it radar reset. And it's easy to go back to your old patterns, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But there's a piece that's called real reality where you just have to own what's going on in your life. Like, it's not better than it is, it's not worse than it is just what it is. And I think that's the part where people really get stuck. Um, it's just hard to have perspective when you're going through something serious. We'll talk about emotions and emotional intelligence and how you rein those in. Um, there's a piece about how this ties all of that together when it comes to resilience. And then we talk about the last 3 steps, or how do you remain resilient because you know the next thing is coming for you. So I am happy to introduce my good friend Ed Blunt. He is a speaker, a trainer, an author, a life design specialist. And what does that mean? It means he gives you tools um, to help you get to the life you want. And he's also an entrepreneur. And I am super excited that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Did I miss anything in your intro?
You missed there's so many accolades, but it's not fair. Like to give them all to you, we'd be here for 2 days. It's just not fair.
All right, we'll flash them on the screen the next time. Um, so Ed, that I sort of wanted to frame this conversation today because you and I agreed that you're going to come on the show the first Monday of the month, and I want to tackle each of those steps. Um, so today we're talking about radar reset, which I think is about self-regulation and self-awareness, about those uh patterns that you repeat over and over again that don't serve you.
Mm,
So I call it like the North Star, right? When things go sideways, you go back to what you know, it's the easiest thing. But
yes.
that North Star often, I think, clouds your judgment. Like you shouldn't, there's a lot of reasons not to go back. So let me start with this for you. Who cares about breaking patterns? Like, why is that important?
Well, who cares? That's a interesting way to frame it. I think that when people are wanting change in their life, unfortunately, they want it the simplest, quickest, and fastest way that they can do it. So when you talk about a pattern change, I think the starting point is a pattern interrupt. And the pattern interrupt comes from what you alluded to at the very beginning in terms of self awareness. So, for example, if people will often say, "Oh, how you doing? Oh, you know how it is, man. It's the same stuff on a different day." Well, if it's the same stuff on a different day, why don't you do something to change that? because most people have resigned themselves to submit to that pattern of predictability, mediocrity. Now, why would anyone do that? Because it's familiar and it's comfortable and it provides, in a very strange way, a level of security. That's
Mhm.
why you look at someone in a very toxic relationship and you're like, well, why don't you just get out? Because they love me. Yeah, I know they
Right.
love you, but this is a train wreck. Okay, but what am I going to do? I'm going to be by myself. So the idea of interrupting the pattern,
Mhm.
getting extremely uncomfortable, is much more terrifying than staying with the devil that you know, as we've heard that phrase. So I think who cares? It goes to a bigger question, which is how much do you care about why you're here? How much do you
Mhm.
care about developing and cultivating your gifts, like being the best version of yourself? I got to get to the heart of that if I'm talking to any individual. Like, what's most important to you? When do you feel most alive? What do you think you were put here to do? And are you living in all of that? And if I can get you to start engaging in those things that move you from the inside, well, then I can get you to care about connecting how, if we interrupt your pattern and then change it, we can get you to those places and how you see yourself, that better version.
Well said. I want to broaden this, and I also want to level set for the people that are listening. What is a pattern? A pattern is not just yes, it's being in a toxic relationship and not getting out. I think patterns are also like perfectionism, overthinking, people pleasing. When you talk about building resilience by breaking patterns, like we have to think more broadly about what a pattern is. What do you
Mm.
think about that?
Well, patterns are fantastic if they're the right patterns. Patterns are revelatory because it allows us to look at what is responsible for the outcomes in our life. And whatever it is, right? Religious, financial, relationship, health, you can look at your patterns of behavior and they will be the tells for why
Mhm.
you are where you are. So it's an opportunity for each of us to look and identify, hey, I'm really good here, but I'm kind of stuck in this part of my life here. Well,
Mhm.
why am I so good here? Well, because I go to church religiously. I go to church every Sunday. I go to Bible study. I'm very vigilant about studying, what I need to study and being a good disciple. Okay, but your health is trash. I eat a lot of fast food. I never have time. My patterns are I just put everything else before myself and I'm always rushing. So I'm just grabbing whatever's in front of me. And I eat a lot of processed foods. And that's why, my health in terms of my diet sucks. Okay, so why are you so vigilant religiously with your religious practice, but you suck with your health practice? Because if you don't have your health, you can't even fulfill what you want to do from a religious standpoint. That's a good point. So let me look at that. So again, it's how we leverage the patterns, but acknowledging that a pattern, if we use it correctly, can be incredibly transformational.
Um, what do you think about this? And then I'm going to go back to what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, I always equate patterns with bad, like these are things that you want to like break, and habits with something you want to support and reinforce.
Mm.
What do you think about that? Or
Well, again, that's it's syntax because people have bad habits. I smoke, right? Like I don't smoke, but let's say I smoke. That's a habit that I've cultivated since I was 16. Well, Ed, that's
Mhm.
a terrible habit. Why do you smoke? I've been doing this since I was a kid. What do you want?
Right.
Horrible habit. It's also a pattern because smoking, I've never ever, I ask this question of anybody that I smell smoke on. I always say, tell me about the anxiety that you're dealing with. Tell me about the unresolved issues that you're dealing with. I've never met a smoker that doesn't have anxiety or unresolved issues, and they never ever say to me, they never say, I don't have any anxiety. I don't have
I'm
any.
good.
Never, never. Doesn't matter where I am. I always ask them
I
those
hear you.
questions. So yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to something you said about we were talking about recognizing patterns. You gave a lot of examples.
Yeah.
I think it has been my experience, including this weekend, by the way. I saw some really interesting stuff. It's impossible to see the picture if you're in the frame. So I think it's easier said than done. Most people don't recognize their own patterns. They don't recognize what they're, the things that they're repeating that don't serve them.
Right.
Um, and you know that. I mean, you've touched millions of people. Um, I don't think most people are that self-aware that they could say they sit down and go, you know what? I noticed that I'm really good in this area and I'm really bad in they go like my life is not what I want it to be.
Yeah.
Um, so how do people develop that muscle to recognize their own, I'm gonna call it their own stuff, like their own patterns, whatever they are.
Well, this is where the trench work comes into play. You and I talked about this the last time we were on. Why you and I are compelled to put content out, compelled to put ourselves in situations where if someone else can hear our voice, then there's a probability, an opportunity that what's coming from our voice could actually help someone make a transformation if we're
Mhm.
fortunate. So I believe you're right. Most people are not going to have a epiphany on their own. They usually are going to have some level of an outside force to interrupt that pattern of familiarity, pattern of mediocrity,
Mhm.
pattern of low self-esteem, low self-worth, and low self-image. So how do we get to those people? It's tough. It's tough. It's
Mhm.
a never-ending question. But we have to be willing to go above and beyond. Anyone that's listening to this, you and myself, we have to every day ask ourselves, how can we put positive messaging out there? How can we give someone an opportunity for transformation? I'm not a
Mhm.
big social media. I don't know that you are either, but we have to. It's a tool that we can use for transformation. So I think it starts there. The painful reality is that a lot of people are going to go to their graves unmoved and unchanged, and they'll have a fixed mindset. But the
Right.
flip side of that, we still have a chance to do some good for a lot of people that would otherwise have never been reached were it not for the efforts that I put in, that you put in, that everybody that's an extension of this puts in.
Excellent. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to get real tactical. Give people some tools. You mentioned like we generally, how do we recognize a pattern that doesn't support us?
Yeah,
And then how do we begin the challenge of breaking it? So let's go to break and we come back, we're gonna get into the dirt and really dig into this.
nice.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So, tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to Tammy's Table. I am breaking bread with Ed Blunt, who is bringing it when we're talking about breaking patterns and recognizing patterns. Hello.
Hello.
All right. So let's give people some real tangible.
Right.
I think everything you said before is really valuable, and hopefully people like receive that. Um, you said most people will go to the grave, like the same way they are today, um, which is unfortunate. So let's talk about, first of all, specifically, like how do you recognize a pattern?
Personal inventory. This was a phrase that I encountered in one of the very first personal development events I ever attended. This was back some 30 years ago. And the author of this weekend said, hey, take stock of your wins and your losses and look at the categories of your life that are important to you. At that time, as a young man, I wasn't married, didn't have kids. I was thinking about professionalism, career, what was that going to look like? I was thinking about how I wanted to show up for myself and my community. Those are the two dominating things. And I looked at my daily regimen and I asked myself the question, anybody can ask themselves this. Okay, well, if I don't have my health, then nothing else matters. So what is it that I do daily for ultimate health and well-being? Am I mindful of the foods that I put in to my body? Am I disciplined with some form of exercise at least 4 or more times a week? Am I consciously aware of the environments that I put myself in from an energetic level? Because if you spend time around toxic, negative people, that will have an impact on your health and well-being as well. If you're in a toxic, negative relationship, if you're around somebody who's constantly degrading you, putting you down, that will have a negative impact on you as well. So going through that process, excuse me, and having the inventory from each category of your life allows you to write it down, and then you can identify where you need to make the improvements.
So go ahead and grab a glass of water. I'm gonna
Thank you.
So listen, when we talk about taking inventory, personal inventory, there's several areas of your life that you want to consider. So Ed was just talking about the most important one, which is your health. Like without your health, you have nothing. So if you think of a pyramid, your health is at the very bottom. It's the foundation of everything else. And then we talk about like time. Take an inventory. Are you sitting in front of the TV for 5 hours a day? Where you could be doing something more productive. So how do you spend your time? Assess your relationships. Like, what are your relationships like? Ed mentioned before, like, are you in toxic relationships? Like, that's really important to take inventory of that. You want to take a professional inventory. Are you happy? Are you doing what you want? A financial inventory. Are you where you want to be? And why aren't you? And what are the patterns? There's patterns even in that piece, right? Overspending, living hand to mouth, whatever that is. And then I also think you want to take an inventory of what's your contribution to the world? What are you giving back? And if the answer is nothing, you got to change that. That's the very tip of the pyramid. So Ed, let's I just was talking about like the areas of your life that you want to take inventory of. Um, literally, what does that look like? Is it a piece of paper and you're like making a list, or like, what's the tool
Well,
that we can tell them to?
you have this itch, this restlessness where it starts in your pit of your gut, where you know that there's something more that you were put here to do. There's a divine dissatisfaction, as Martha Graham would say, with the status quo. You just feel like I'm not putting the full use of my life to work. And from there, you have a pen and a pad, and you can write these observations down about yourself, having an honest, unabashed look in the accountability mirror and being real. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable, embarrassing, humiliating, but it's the truth. And you take that truth and then you find building blocks. For example, Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I think, is a pivotal tool where you recognize how your behavior and thought process has created your life and how you can change those things to create a new life. And so it's painstaking work. It doesn't happen from a podcast or a book or a session. It happens by doing these things over and over again so that each day you take better actions. Let's say today, for example, I commit to smoking 3 fewer cigarettes. I smoke 10 cigarettes a day. I'm going to knock it down to 7. Okay, it's still not great because I'm smoking, but it's a step in the right direction with a goal by the end of next week. I will be down to 1 cigarette a day. And it starts there. I think sometimes people expect there to be this panacea and boom, I'm going to quit cold turkey. Yeah, do people do cold turkey transformation? Today's a new day. Yes, they do, but very few will stick with it. However, there's 2 sides of it, right? There's a lot of power in making the decision. You made the decision that you were no longer going to be in this particular environment and you left. Okay. Could have been a job, could have been a relationship. You were like, I'm done. Like today's a new day. Like I made that decision. But here's the funny thing. People will say, because I always ask people who are divorced, I say, when did you know? Oh shoot, baby. When
The
I was
day of my
walking down
the
the
day
aisle,
of my wedding. The day of my wedding.
no, they say that, right? When I was walking down the aisle, I knew. When did you know? Oh, about year 1. Yeah, but you didn't get divorced until 9 years later. Yeah, I know. Took me some time to get around to it. Like that's a real thing. So the decision is in an instant, but the actual action and follow through, that's a different conversation. So everybody has the opportunity to take a quantum leap in terms of the decision and the action behind it. You can literally change the entire course of your life in one day for sure. It's just that it's not, most people won't do it. But if we give them these little steps, then hey, if you're down to 1 cigarette by next week, and by the end of April, you will be, off of cigarettes, even though you'd be going through severe withdrawals, I'll take it.
So listen, you mentioned at the top of the show, we were talking about patterns and how you change them, and you said you disrupt them.
Yeah.
Take me step by step. Like, and I want you to be really literal.
Okay.
Like, what do I do first to do that?
So I had a habit of getting up in the mornings and I would slowly start my day and I would grab some water. I might write in my journal, just kind of taking my time. And I was looking at how I was starting my day. And I said, this needs to be interrupted. It's not kickstarting my day the way that I want. I want to start my day with some level of physical activity. So what I did was I put my pad, so it's the first thing I see when I come downstairs, and I have my uh, water bottle set next to the pad. And I immediately, before I do anything, before I engage with the world, before I write in my journal, before I read a book, before I do anything, I literally put my camera on, video, I hit record, I put it next to the pad, and I go right into this plank. And I start my day off extremely uncomfortable. So if you ask most people, do you plank? They're going to tell you no. If you ask them, the ones that do, well, how long do you typically plank? They're going to say 30, 60 seconds. So I do plank and I plank for minutes. And I hold the plank, and that's exactly how I start my day. So this is a disruption of a previous pattern that I used to have for years. For years, I started my morning off very leisurely because I used to say to myself, I'm not a morning person. I used to say, well, I'm a night owl, so mornings are kind of slow, they drag. I just decided to stop that. So I'm going to interrupt it. So that's one example, real life, of me interrupting a pattern. And I've been doing that for months now, and it totally changes how the rest of my morning goes because of that one simple disruption.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think it's worth noting not everybody is or can be physical like that. So it doesn't have to be a plank, right? It could be a walk. It could be, everyone's at a different level of
Mhm.
physicality. So I love the point, which is like start your day doing something uh that is physical but also makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? So if you normally walk 1 block because that's all you can handle, make sure you set a goal to walk 2 blocks like the next day.
Hmm.
Right? Okay. I'm making sure I'm breaking it all down. I'm breaking
Yeah.
it down. This is a recipe, to follow. Okay, so you've started your day. You've made yourself physically uncomfortable.
Right.
What's next? What do I do next?
So look at what it is that you want to disrupt. So for somebody, if it is a fitness routine, which I find for a lot of people is difficult because they get so swept up with, well, I got to get drop the kids off to school and I got to get to work and I got to have a cup of coffee and like I don't have time, Ed. I don't have time to do that. Well, if you commit to wake up 30 minutes earlier, I know it's inconvenient, but success is not about convenience. And you put your running shoes in your outfit next to your bedside. So when you get up, just put them on, get out the door, and you're out the door for 15 minutes. That's 30 minutes earlier that you got up. So that's an example. As you go throughout the rest of your day, if your disruption is in having better relationships, higher caliber people in your life, well, that means when the phone rings or the text goes off, and it's someone wanting to engage in idle conversation or to talk about nothing, well, don't be so reactive. Stop thinking that you have to answer your phone every time it rings.
Mhm.
It's okay to let it go to voicemail. It's okay not to respond immediately to every single text. You can be more selective. You can be more intentional. That's
Mhm.
a disruption of an old pattern of you feel like I got to accommodate everybody that reaches out to me in my phone. I have to respond to every social media post. I have to respond to every ding that email comes in. Like disrupt that pattern. That allows your mind to be more focused on whatever the task is at hand, whether if it's your job or you work from home or you run your own business, etc. You have to be very disciplined about um, um, eliminating distraction. So it's about the things that you're constantly giving these little bits of attention to. Well, that's how extreme minutes that can turn into hours get siphoned out of your day. One and two, you could be missing an opportunity to form a connection with someone that can help you get further faster because you're engaging on something silly you saw on social media or because you're going back and forth on social media about some political,
Yeah.
idea. You know what I'm saying? You get easily distracted. So those are some of the steps throughout the day that you can be more mindful of.
Yeah, that's good. By the way, now I know why it took you like 2 weeks to call me back. I will. Um, so I think Ed, that was like so well said. And I believe in general, this at this stage of the game where you're trying to recognize your patterns
Yep.
and begin to break them, you have to have an ongoing sense of awareness, I also think, throughout your day. Like recognize you being you and maybe make a note of that. These are the things that I tend to do, whether it's at work or in your personal life, recognize you being you. So we might do a part. Oh, go ahead.
Well, listen, by the way, this is not age specific. One of the things you'll hear people say, oh, this is just the way I am. Like I've been this way my whole life. It's not age specific. Sister Madonna was in her 60s when she made a decision to make fitness a priority. Up until her 60s, she had never exercised a day in her life. By the time she was 72, she had competed in over 35 triathlons and Iron Woman competitions. And she
Wow.
still runs marathons to this day. She's in her 80s. So it's not age specific. It's not, oh, it's just the way I am. You can make a decision to make a different choice and completely disrupt a habit pattern that's formulated your identity, and you could create a whole new habit pattern for a whole new identity.
Awesome. Well said. Hey, listen, we're coming down to the end of the show. What are you working on? And
Um,
how do people find you?
let's see. I'm working on we're launching our Connect MD virtual care all across the United States. One, two. I just was speaking for the greatest of all time, Mr. Les Brown. I spoke for him in Miami on Saturday. And believe it or not,
Nice.
I have 1/4 the voice that I have now. I'm still healing, as you can
Because
hear.
of that.
It was I don't know how I pulled it off, but I had a microphone, so whatever. But it was great. We had a great time. So I just continue to make sure each day I'm doing my part to get the good news out, and to give people viable solutions for a much healthier life when it comes to their finances, their health and wellness, and their overall just well-being.
Awesome. So what we'll do is we'll post your website, and we'll also post both websites in the caption of this, so people can, get to you,
Okay.
because I know they will want to get to you. So listen, Ed, thank you so much for joining. I'm looking forward to seeing you next month. And thanks to everybody for listening to Tammy's Table. We will see you soon.
Thank you, Miss Tammy. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
All right.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.